Welcome to the DNA Talks podcast, where we take on the mission of unlocking the code of your genetics. This season is all about you, upgrading your health, not just on the surface, but down to the root cause. Join us as your clinicians at the DNA company investigate your DNA and beyond. The intention of this podcast is to enhance your lifestyle by changing what is in your control. This does not substitute the medical advice given by a personal doctor, therapist, and other healthcare professionals. Welcome, everybody. So, who's joining us today is somebody I've spoken to a few times. In fact, just coincidentally, she just helped me find a supplier for a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. So that's a whole other story we got to get into. Purely coincidental, timing was serendipitous, and that's what she has sitting behind her. But we're going to get into a lot today. First, let me introduce Lisa Tamati, all the way from New Zealand.
G'day. It's really nice to be here, Kashif.
Yeah, good seeing you again. Your story, I mean, we it's hard to compress it into an hour, but really people need to hear, because your ability to take all of what life can throw at you and just fix it, and then become, there's a lot of things that you've done that are beyond what we think human potential is. Let's just say that. And we're going to dig into some of that today. And this thing that we walk around in every day, we think we know what it's capable of. We think we know what it's for. And you have defied those odds so many times on mountaintops and deserts. You name the place, you've been there, breaking your body and fixing it again. And so we're going to dive into that. So your book, Relentless, also talks about your story with you and your mother and how you did the same thing there. The way you see life and the way you're able to push yourself, partly based on your DNA, as we know.
As we know.
Yeah. And that also, the way you were able to take a horrible diagnosis that most people would have just accepted and started making changes and plans for a different future, you fought back and flipped the diagnosis on its head. And not only that, wrote a book about it, telling the world how to do the same. So we're going to dive into a bunch of stuff. So first of all, you are this world-renowned long-distance runner on purpose. When we hear some of the stories, people would wonder why, So
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about what got you there and some of your adventures there.
Yeah, well, for a start, I've probably got a few mental issues. You have to be a bit crazy to do some of the stuff I did. And I am now retired, so not doing the long stuff now. So somewhere along the way, I must have cured myself from my crazy. But yeah, I grew up in a family where it was, like sport was everything, and being physically tough was what was valued by my dad, especially. And so, and being a little girl that always wanted to please dad, I always wanted to represent my country and do all that sort of good things. And I wasn't, unfortunately, though, I wasn't really particularly talented from a genetic point of view. I didn't have what it took to be. For a start, I was a gymnast as a kid. And genetically, I wasn't right for being a gymnast. I was too tall and too, like you've got to be quite tiny to be a gymnast, and quite, compact, and have a lot of specific set of genetics, really. And I didn't have those. And so when I got to puberty, I grew up too tall and too long and everything. And so that sort of didn't work. And so then I tried other sports, tried surfing for years, and failed miserably at that. And it wasn't until I really got into running that I came into my own. Now, I was absolutely hopeless as a short, fast distance, like a short, fast runner. Again, genetically not made for such a thing. But what I did find is that I had a hell of a lot of determination and a lack of dopamine. So my DRD2 gene was not really good. So I always chasing dopamine, right? So when you have that sort of a genetic profile, you tend to be a very determined sort of, and other genes that are involved in that mix, obviously, but very sort of bloody minded. So when I set my mind to something, I just sort of, carried on until I got good at it. And so I ended up doing what's called ultramarathons, and ultramarathons are sort of anything over we talk kilometers. I don't know what you guys talk. Do you
Yeah, kilometers.
Kilometers.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 kilometers and above. So 100K, 100 milers, 200, 300, you name
Wow.
it. And some crazy things. And then fast forward and met a young Austrian guy that I went out with for a few years, and he was an extreme athlete, and we sort of toured the world and climbed and trekked and cycled around places. And it was basically 5 years in boot camp of hell with this
Mm.
guy. And that sort of honed my ability to really push hard. And then I actually got into the actual official sort of ultramarathoning world, and then just loved it because I was in this world of amazing people doing crazy things and having all these
Yeah.
adventures and just living my life, you know. And so I had lots of struggles, lots of failures, no talent whatsoever, but ended up having quite a long career and doing a whole lot of crazy, amazing things, really.
I mean, 100-mile runs these days. You wonder, can an electric car even go that far? You know, like and you're running that far. I can't
Very
even
slowly.
imagine. Yeah,
Very
slowly,
slowly.
but you're making it happen. Like, that's unbelievable. And the thing that you said earlier about your genetic propensity, you're hitting something that really people have to change their thinking on what genetics means, meaning that here's a person who believes that genetically they weren't designed to be an athlete, right? But being an athlete isn't just what you physically look like.
No.
Right? In fact, the best of the best, it's their mind that gets them there. In fact, if you talk to a top NBA, NHL type player, they'll tell you their biggest problems are their friends asking for free tickets and mom wanting a new car. You know, it's the stressors that distract them. It's their mind. So whenever it comes to your genome and how you're wired, it's less like, is this good or bad? Everything is good if you're in the right context.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is bad if you're in the wrong context, right? You trying to do your short sprints, it doesn't look like you're wired for it.
No.
You running 100 miles, which is unbelievable, and what tiny fraction of humanity has actually been able to say they can do that, you're able to have the gift of the brain that powers it. So it's awesome seeing that context created this massive result.
Yeah, and I think when you look at your genetics and you go, okay, I'm not talented at that, but how can I adapt to the situation? And
Yeah.
as we know, like yeah, there are certain limitations. I mean, you're talking about basketball. Not everyone's going to be a basketball player if they're 5'3". Like it's probably
Yeah.
not going to happen. So there's certain limitations that we have to go around, but within that, you can find a variant that maybe suits you, or another type of sport that suits you, or whatever the case may be. But it's about not letting your genetics define who you are, but
Yeah.
using your genetics so that you're optimizing who you are.
And that's true for anything from fibromyalgia to weight loss. Like, there's a reason you got there, and there's a reason why you're stuck. And use your genes to set you on the right path that's personalized for you.
Yep.
And so now some of these, I read your presentations, I've been through your book, I've heard a lot of your stories, and I think we need to put a little more detail into the pain.
Into the pain.
Because carrying 100 miles is one thing, but I don't think people realize what you actually endured. So tell us about one of your crazy trips.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Which one should I pick? So this was a race in the Himalayas, 222 kilometers long. It is extreme altitude, and anyone who's been to altitude would know that, like, you've got, well, where we were going was up to 5,700, 5,800 meters. So we had two massive passes that we had to get over within this 222 Ks, and we had 60 hours to do it. So that was the sort of parameters of the race. Now, one of the reasons why I did mostly deserts, so I've done 2,000 kilometers in the Sahara, I've done the Arabian, the Libyan, Niger, Jordan, Gobi Desert, Death Valley in the USA, outback of Australia, different parts of it. And the reason I was gravitating towards deserts was they were hot, dry places. And so as an asthmatic, I could cope with that, right? Because my lungs were pretty good in the hot, dry sort of things. But you put me in the cold and you put me in the mountains and I wasn't very good. So sign up for a race in the Himalayas. That's logical. But I was just so excited when I heard about this race because I'd read every mountaineering book there was known to man, right? I just loved all the things that the mountaineers do. And I'd never been a mountaineer, but I'd always dreamed of going to the Himalayas. And so when this race came up, I thought, well, shall I jump in and have a go, And I've been racing for decades and maybe I've got enough experience to get through this sort of thing. So signed up. And the first year that this race had been held, there were only 3 runners there. And 2 of them had ended up in hospital and 1 had ended up actually finishing the race. So we knew that it was humanly possible because we weren't actually sure, because it was like 3,600 meters was the starting point, up to 5.7, down to 3.6, up to 5.8. Anyone who knows anything about altitude, that's pretty bloody high, and you're sort of got about 1/3 of the oxygen up at that level that you do down here at sea level. So being an asthmatic, having altitude problems, and then the cold, and then the huge amount of uphill. So you're really using your lungs because you're running uphill, running, walking, crawling uphill. And so I took on this race, and this was really, really scary. And then I had the worst build-up you can possibly imagine, because I'd managed to get this thing called a hypoxico tent, where you sleep in it and it takes some of the oxygen out of the air at night so that your body starts to adjust to the altitude. So the reasoning. But I went too high too fast and slept in it at 6,500 meters every night. I didn't follow the instructions. And I was running out of time. That's why I was like impatiently trying to get my red blood cell count up, and ended up with a hypoxic brain concussion, bacteria proliferating in my body, because when you don't have enough oxygen and you're hypoxic, the bacteria run wild. So ending up with all these sort of horrible infections. And this was, not long out before the race, and I ended up, like really quite a bad brain concussion. And going to my doctor, and I didn't know anything at that point about anything. And he said, "What are your SpO2 stats at night when you take them, you put that little thing on your finger that they do in the hospital?" And I said, "Oh, around 70%. And he was like, 70% is deadly. You're lucky that you woke up and you've been knocking off your brain cells. So you're very lucky that you're alive. And I suggest you get the heck out of that tent, and that you maybe think about pulling out of this race, because you've now sensitized your body to altitude." And on top of that, I was anemic, because I was, a woman. I had a menstrual cycle that was a bit out of control, and I was having problems with things like fibroids and all that. And this is before I knew anything about DNA, by the way. So I couldn't, didn't know what to do to get rid of it. I do now. And so I was really, really struggling to carry oxygen. And then I'm heading, then I went over to Australia, and I did a race in the Blue Mountains over there as a prelim race, 100 Ks in the mountains. Managed to finish it, did okay. But the next day I'm doing a photo shoot for the North Face, and I end up coming down. We've been out there for 15 hours doing this massive photo shoot. When the North Face do something, they do it properly. And I came down on my ankle, and I ripped the ligaments off both sides of my left ankle. So now I had, a hypoxic brain concussion, all these infections. I'm knackered from this race, and now I've ripped the ligaments off my ankle. The doctors are saying you won't be able to run for at least 7 weeks. And the race is 10 weeks away, right? So at that point, I'm like, do I pull out? And I'm like, nah, I'm going to keep going. I've spent 1.5 years training. I might as well just give it everything I've got and see how we go, So instead of focusing on the things that I couldn't do, I focused on what I could do. So I could do mental training. I could do swim training. I could do the gym. I could do all of those. I just couldn't run. So you find a way around the obstacle, right? But you keep moving forward, and then you keep your mind on track to what the goal is, and you don't let the negative self-talk come in. Oh my God, this is the worst thing that could have happened to me. And so went over to the race, absolutely terrified, but got over there. 7 runners turn up to do this race, and I thought I'd be the only woman, and all I have to do, because I wanted to be the first woman to ever do this race, right? Yep. I get over there, and 5 of them are women and two guys. And so I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding, right? And women are really good at ultramarathoning, because the longer the race, the more likely it is that a woman actually stands on the top of the podium, which is probably one of the only sports where that happens, right? Because we don't have the power and the speed that men do, but we do have the endurance, and we have an ability to burn fat better. And we have a mindset, and that mindset is often, as strong as the men's. And so sometimes we end up on top of the podium. So it's not, that women are weaker in all sports. Sometimes they're actually better for certain things. So anyway, I get over there and I'm just starting to run again. I'm anemic still. I can't adapt to the altitude. Everyone else is adapting. We have a bunch of doctors that come over to study us because we're like these weird little guinea pigs that they can do all these tests on and see what happens to humans when they're doing this sort of crazy stuff at these sort of altitudes. But they're also telling us about cerebral edema and pulmonary edema and how you can die this way and that way. And it's like really negative sort of environment to be around. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to, could die. And it gets to the point where you're like so terrified that I'm like, shoot, I really don't want to be here anymore and I want to pull out. But you've committed, right? You've got responsibilities. So I'm like, no, well, I've got to do it. So I said to my crew, I want you to surround me and protect me from anything negative, to keep me away from the runners, the doctors, the Indian army who are trying to stop it, anybody who's negative about this. And I want you to fill me with positivity so that I can cope, And so that's what they did for the last 2 days. We just isolated ourselves. They talked me through everything. Every time I was, ready to jump off a cliff and go, I just can't do this. They'd talk me down and they got me to the start line, so to speak. It was a really, really brutal race. And I won't go into all the details of all the race, but, I knew that the first pass I'd probably be okay. I sort of managed to get up to the top of the pass, had a vomiting on the way up and stuff, but it was okay. At the top, you're not running, you're only walking because you can't run at that level. And then on the other side, I'm coming down, I start running, get an asthma attack, and then come down into the village and this town where there was just horrific traffic and, pollution and just crazy sort of Indian city that had lots of, crazy traffic that you had to get through and survive. And then we had to get out the other side and then to the mountains again. And another 24 hours later, I won't bore you with that, but we're heading into the second pass. And the second pass I knew was going to be make or break. And in the morning, it was like 40 odd degrees. And I ended up with a heat stroke, passing out. Guys came and picked me up, stuck me in the crew car, tried to cool me down, get me back out. And then I'm facing up the barrel of 35 kilometers up the side of these mountains again. And the brain is just fighting. You're in so much pain, like it's unimaginable pain. And you're struggling to breathe and you're just doubting yourself and you're just battling for every single step. And as the day slowly goes on, this battle is getting worse and worse. And I'm inside, I'm thinking, there's no way in hell I'm going to get up this mountain. But I owe it to my crew and I owe it to my sponsors and everyone else to give it everything I have. So I'll go till I can't step anymore, And so as I'm going up this mountain and then the day wears on and then the cold comes in and I'm putting on layer upon layer of clothing and then I'm ending up hypothermic and then it starts a massive snowstorm comes in. And then we'd have like these army trucks coming through on these really single, like the world's most dangerous highways, that program, like it's like that, like single massive drop-offs and you've got like 40 army trucks coming through and this altitude above 5,000 meters where you've got no oxygen and then you've got this diesel. And it was just, I ended up having another asthma attack. I had to get asthma medications and have a bit of a break and then back out on the road. And then I was down to a walk and it was like 3 kilometers an hour and I could hardly move forward. And I'm freezing, hypothermic, just absolutely at my wit's end. I've been out now for 45 hours or so. So if you imagine sleep deprivation, all of that on top of the pain, the cold, the can't breathe, all of this, and you're in dire straits. And I'm just hanging on for dear life to try to get to the top of this pass. And I'm thinking it's only 2 kilometers. I'm trying to calculate it. And I said to my guys, go and measure exactly how far it is, work it out on the maps. And they come back and they said, no, Lisa, it's 6 kilometers. And I just broke because I just couldn't take any more. Like I thought I was way closer than that. And that meant another 2 hours at the speed I was going, which was 3 Ks an hour. And I just sat down on the ground and just bawled my eyes out. And that's it. Can't do it anymore. I'm done. I'm broken. And my crew came around and they huddled around me and they said, oh my God, we're so proud of you and you're just amazing. And we've been here. We've seen what you've gone through. And they gave me permission to fail. And then there was one guy in my crew and he came over and he wasn't smiling and he wasn't hugging me. And he sat down in front of me in the snow and he grabbed me by the shoulders and he shook me. He said, get up now. And he used more colourful language than that. He was like, get up now and walk. You are not going to fail now. I'm not going to let you fail now. You are this close to the top, and not after
Wow.
what you've been through, and not after what I've been through, because I've been in that damn car for the last 45 hours. You're going to get up. And that shocked me so much that I found the ability to stand up and take another step. And when I took another step,
Yeah.
I could take another step. And one of the other guys came out there, and they both, these two guys, they walked me and talked me up to the top of this pass over that 6 kilometers in the middle of the snowstorm. Like, huge sacrifice on their behalf. They had cerebral edema, they had like headaches, and they were sick, and they were, almost as miserable as I was. But they got me over that hump. And that's what good friends do. They get you up over that hump sometimes. And then I knew that I was going to finish the race. I had 33 kilometers to go from the top of the pass, but I knew that I'd make it because it was downhill. And I crossed the line in 53 hours and 5 minutes, and I was the second woman home. I
Wow.
was beaten by a 55-year-old grandmother from England who also had asthma. In other words,
Dang.
it wasn't, the guys, there were two guys in front of me as well. We won't mention them. But the lady that won it, she won overall, and she's 55, and she's an asthmatic, and she doesn't look like the super athlete, like you would imagine someone who's doing something like that, because it's not about your age, your sex, your ethnicity, or your abilities. That one's about up here, and
Yeah.
teamwork, because without the team, I wouldn't have got there. So, yeah, I've got a whole doco on that one. If anyone wants to watch it, they can reach out to me afterwards, and I'll send them the doco.
Yeah, everyone should watch it to understand human potential and understand if you're stuck, what it's possible for us to overcome and what the body will give you if you demand more. We don't want to hurt ourselves. Yeah, obviously there was training and you got your body to a certain point.
Yeah, yeah.
If I went and done that race, I probably wouldn't leave the town. I'd start snacking on local food trucks and whatever, But what's possible is incredible. And how many people can actually say they've gone through something like this, which tells me two things. You are an incredible human. And
Stupid.
second, that we don't try hard enough, right? A lot of us don't try hard enough. So it's very inspiring in terms of someone that has a problem, an issue, relationship, health, weight, whatever. There's more you can do,
Yeah, and
right?
you don't want to live your life on the edge all the time, like pushing to those limits all the time. I mean, the title of my podcast is Pushing the Limits, so I do talk about pushing the limits a lot. But there is a place for, and as you know from genetics, like, we need rest and recovery. And one of the great things that I learned when I did your testing was that I have a lot of oxidative stress. I don't handle oxidative stress very well. So I needed to prioritize rest and recovery, and if I
Yeah.
wanted to live longer. And that was game changing for me. When I learned all about genetics, and Dr. Mansoor Mohammed is, how is he, by the way? Because he's the most wonderful person. And
Yeah, brilliant guy. The father, I would say, of functional genomics.
yeah,
He's the one that took this deep genetic science that he was doing in terms of cancer research and said there's more here than just identifying and treating disease. Why do we even need to have disease?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And you had the blessing of actually working with him directly,
yeah.
earlier on when we were in our research phase. And we learned why you have the psychopath ability to do what you do.
Exactly.
Right?
He said, "Oh, that doesn't surprise me." Once he looked at my
Yeah. Yeah.
and he was the one that opened the world of genetics to me, and really just changed my life in so many ways, because it's changed my life professionally. What we do now at the DNA company, and the testing that you guys do, and that I've now got in my clinic and what I do, but also personally, on a personal level, and for my family, it's been absolutely game changing, because this is information I wish I'd had when I was 2 years old,
Yeah.
and had that user manual. I wish I'd known all the stuff that I know. And yeah, one of the things that came out of that is that I have very poor GST genes. I have very poor 9p21 gene. So inflammation, oxidative stress, up the wazoo. At that time, it made me actually re-look at my life and go, well, if I want to live a long time, I better change up what I'm doing. And that includes doing ultramarathons, because that
Yeah.
was not going to be conducive to me having a long, healthy life. And I'd already paid
It's
quite a lot of
funny because
consequences. Yeah.
when you look at images of sort of retired marathon runners, that are getting into their 60s ish, you'll see like one or two people look incredible, but the majority of them don't.
Mm.
The majority of them look like there's wear and tear
Yep.
because of that oxidative stress issue, and when
Hmm.
you're putting yourself through it. But like you said, you've identified it early, so it's either stop or supplement. Like, here's a biological system that is not working for me. I know how to upregulate it so I can keep doing what I want, and then that's another option
Mhm.
also.
Exactly. Exactly. And I've done both, So now I have switched up the type of sport that I do. So now I do what's right for my genetics, which is a shorter, sharper, high intensity sort of CrossFit style training a lot, so a lot of resistance training. Not heavy, heavy weights though, not the super heavy stuff, because it's not also not
Yeah.
suited to me. And I do a lot of yoga, in meditation, things that are going to bring my system down because I have way too much adrenaline and so on. So it's a balance now of that. And, I'm grateful for the experiences that I had as an athlete, and I did it for 25 years. So it's not like it was long enough. It was long enough. So I
Yeah.
retired when I was 40, 48, and mum had an aneurysm at that time. So that was a good time to quit as well. So there were other reasons to quit as well. But I'm very glad that I did, because I didn't know the damage I was doing, but I hadn't been able to have children, and when I trace these things back, they're pretty obvious why. Now,
Yeah.
there's a combination of things, but there was a lot of damage done that I'm now undoing, and now my focus is on longevity, being functionally fit for as long as I possibly can, and trying to do that for my clients as well, so that we slow the aging process down. And I just had an age test done by True Diagnostic, the company True
Yeah. Yeah.
Diagnostic,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's a really interesting area of science now, where we're going to be able to work out how fast even different organs are aging. And I still think there's a few bugs in the system. I think we're still early days for that science, but and some of the clocks are more accurate than other clocks. But the one that is most accurate is the Dunedin pace marker, and this one shows the rate of aging, how fast you
Mm.
are aging at that point in time. And mine came back at a 0.69 for every year that I'm living at the time that I did the test. And now that's one of the best in the world, because if you can keep that under one, like for every year that you're alive, you're aging less than a year, you exponentially lower your risk of all diseases, all of the age-related diseases, the Alzheimer's, the
Yep.
diabetes, and all of that. And so to have a marker come back at 0.69 means that I'm killing it now.
Yeah.
But it did show that on my extrinsic age, a lot of damage was done. Like I saw had accelerated aging on other things because of all the past,
Right.
as an athlete. So I'm clawing my way back really well, but I was starting from a place that was more damaged than, with that oxidative stress and so on, than it would have
No, that's
otherwise been.
phenomenal because you're coming from an extreme to another extreme, which is no surprise given the way you're wired. This extreme of like the body being taking so much abuse to all of a sudden you've reduced your rate of aging. And that number is an impressive number, by the way. We see these tests all the time. That's not easy to achieve.
No, it is,
And this is
apparently. It's pretty amazing. So
yeah,
you're
that's
up
solid.
on all of that stuff? You know about it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
We believe it's an amazing way to look at truly how old you are on the inside,
Mm.
right? Because I mean, the science of you can do blood work, you can look at protein and inflammatory type markers and try and come up with some kind of formulation. But this is empirical. This is like here's a marker and it's very precise. There's millions, if not billions, of data points contributing to it, and then you really know. And
Yeah,
so
so
that,
stoked.
it speaks to what you're doing now because you use the word retired, but you're retired from running. Meanwhile, you're a very busy person that is constantly active and doing things. And so you're now working on helping people experience their true longevity potential. And how do you do that? What are some of the tools that you employ?
Yeah, I mean, I have, for me personally, a really extensive protocols that I have, and I'm a biohacking maniac. You know, my house is full of biohacking things, including hyperbaric oxygen chambers and or clinic that I run, and red light therapy. Big fan of. You know, I have a particular diet, and I have a lot of supplements that I take. You know, I do believe we in supplementation. I think our food today is just nowhere near what it used to be, and unfortunately, that means we better be supplementing with the right things. You know, and I'm constantly learning. So my and I love it. I just love this whole world of trying to better myself, and you know, I suppose I'm competing with against myself in another way. You know, and when I'm working with clients, my basis is, if I can, is to get genetic testing done, because it's a one off. You don't need to do it every, you know, like with other tests, which are very valuable, by the way, things like, you know, microbiome and all of those sorts of things. But you have to do them, you know, and
Yeah,
compare.
regular.
Whereas the genetic test you do once and you've got that information, at least you've got your blueprint. It's not telling you where you're at now. So that's why some of
Yeah,
the other stuff is good to combine with that. But I like to look through that lens plus that lens plus that lens, and then work with the person to get them an ideal protocol for their life, you know,
yeah,
and whatever ailment that they're dealing with. And I just don't believe that we need to age as fast as most of us are aging. I think, well, we have the ability now. We know it. I mean, you and I know it because we know the science that is happening in this world, and we know the stuff that's coming down the pipeline and how exciting it
yeah,
is. But the general population don't. And they just think that, you know, you just go through life and you just age and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's like, there's nothing more further than the truth.
yeah,
How you age is very, very much tied to your environment and understanding your genetics so that you optimize that environment. Because that means that the environment that suits Kashif does not suit Lisa, you
mm,
know, necessarily. And so putting you in your environment that works for you, and the right food, the right diet, the right exercise, the right supplementation, the right mindset, all of that sort of stuff means that we can optimize you when we've got that info. If we're just taking it as just looking at, say, functional medicine testing and stuff, we don't know that piece of the puzzle. We know where they're at from some markers in different areas, which is valuable, but we need to combine these two, I think, in order.
yeah. Agreed. Yeah, it's like here's your potential, here's your wiring, which kind of points to red flags. Like here's address this, right? Because in whatever problem you're complaining about is potentially rooted in this. But then we could also measure in time, like you said, to see how bad is it, right? And how much improvement did we experience, like what you've experienced.
Hmm.
What would you attribute that improvement to? So you've slowed your pace of aging down. What are the two or three key things that you're doing that you think really drive the needle?
I think the exercise, the change in the exercise regime, I think that's massive in my case because it was a particularly stressful thing for my body. The other thing is I think I've gotten on top of a lot of the inflammatory situations that I had going on in my body. Like I was an asthmatic, I had
Yeah.
you know, hay fever, allergies, you know, dust, allergic to cats, all of that type of thing. I don't have any of that eczema. I don't have any of those
Wow.
things now because I have the right supplementation to make sure that, you know, I'm optimizing my genetics for that. I'm
Yeah.
keeping the foods that I eat, you know, relatively. I'm not perfect. I live by the 80-20 rule as far as, you know, I'll have a cheat meal every now and then. I'll have, you know, something, but generally speaking, I eat a hell of a lot of vegetables. I'm, you know,
Yeah.
eating the rainbow every day. In fact, I stuff vegetables in me any which way I can. In the form of vegetable smoothies that taste like crap, but it's getting that. You know, I'm always aiming for around 600 grams of vegetables a day of green leafy vegetables. I think that's been a game changer. But I'm not a vegetarian or vegan or anything like that. I eat a good amount of protein as well, and
Mm,
animal proteins in my case because that suits my genetics. And again, it's that's something that I've learned that's what I need. I was
yeah.
vegetarian for a number of years, and actually, I was never been so sick. For me, that was just not ideal for me, and I wasn't doing it perhaps correctly either. You know, so I think there's room for all diets within the genetic profiles, but we have to counter. and be aware of our areas of weakness. So I think those are some of the things when I look back at all the ailments I used to have and don't have, it's just gold now. Like I just don't have. I used to have incredible back pain. I broke my back when I was 21. I had two discs that were really severely compressed and bulging discs,
Mm.
and then it went to four because of all the running that I did that were, basically gone. And they said, well, you need to fuse your back. And I was having spasms, and, like 10 times a day, I'd be like, spasming on the floor, and really, really bad shape with my back and always in pain. And now I have no pain whatsoever. I didn't have a fused back. I got on
Mm.
top of my digestive issues. I got on top of my inflammatory issues in the body, and the pain has gone. The pain from the back.
That's
And I do
incredible.
a lot of core. That was the other thing that I did, was strengthen the core so that it's able to
Mm.
maintain that back structure. So with those three things, I now live a pain-free life, where I used to be in hell pain in my back all the time. Even in my running career, I was just
Yeah.
always in pain. Nothing
That's
now.
that's awesome because this is where people get stuck. Imagine there's some pain and you're diagnosed with chronic pain, meaning you're told that this is a part of your life now,
I
right?
would never accept that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's different types of ailments, as we know, and what your situation is. But I've been told so many times, and this coming back to Mum's story, that it's impossible. She's dying. There is no way out. She's got, when she had the aneurysm and the stroke, we were told she'd never ever come back to us. She was never going to have any quality of life. Well, they were wrong, dead
Mm.
wrong. And it took thousands and thousands of hours of retraining her brain, and it took hyperbaric oxygen, and it took genetic testing, and it took diet, and it took supplements, and it took everything it took. But we got her back, and we got her back fully. And then we were hit with concussion after concussion, because in their process she fell over a lot as she learned to walk again and so on.
Mm.
So, and on top of brain injuries, that's not a good thing. And then we were hit with a CNS lymphoma, which is brain tumors. And we were told after the brain surgery, they took the tumor out, they did the pathology, she's got weeks to live, there's nothing we can do, this is a very aggressive cancer, get ready to die. That was now 2.5 years ago. I've written a book called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You, and Mum doesn't have cancer in the brain.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to just roll over and die. You have to have a fighter mentality. I mean, I have chucked the bus at everything that I have at her rehabilitation. At some point, we're all going to die. But my attitude is very much one of a fighter. I'm a warrior. I'm a fighter. I don't
Mm.
go, oh, well, she's had a good innings. It's time to go. Stuff that. Like we
Yeah.
every damn day that we get on this planet is a blessing. Like you're dead a long time. And I don't agree with that attitude, and I get it every time we end up in the hospital for something, and we do on occasion. We had GI bleeding a few months ago, and they're like, sign this piece of paper that we won't resuscitate you if you should have a heart attack or anything, because you're not worth saving. That's the message I'm
Wow.
getting. They're saying, sign this piece of paper because we could break your ribs if we do, have to resuscitate you or something. And I'm like, break my damn ribs, Mum says. I don't, like, bring me back. I want to
Yeah.
come back. And they're going, well, you'd be in a very vegetative state. And she's like, well, I've been there before. And I came back from that before. Like we write people off, and they want to write people off. I mean, this is, getting a bit off topic, but I believe that life is precious, and that we should fight to stay here, and that you should give people the opportunity, especially if they want to. And it's really up to them. If Mum said to me, I'm done, it's over, well, I wouldn't just accept it, but I would have to respect her wishes. But she wants to fight, then I'm going to fight with her,
Yeah. Well,
and
we know where those genetics came from for you.
yeah,
You know.
both of my parents, both fighters. I did lose my
Yeah.
dad. I lost him 3 years ago, and that was another very tragic situation. But he was a fighter. He fought to the end, and I fought
Yeah.
alongside him to the very, very, very last breath. And,
So you did something for your mom, which most people wouldn't even consider because you're, again, being guided by clinicians, which is, you need to do that, the acute response
mm,
of medication, chemo, whatever it is. But you decided to install what we see behind you, that blue tube, right? So
that
how
you're
did
going to
you?
get.
No, yeah, I'm trying to get one now,
they're,
the same one.
yeah, they're good.
So how did you get there? Where did you find that this is the thing that my mom needs?
Yeah, the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So this
Yeah.
was my desperate search when she had the aneurysm 8 years ago, was to, like what out in the world, because I was being told there is nothing. So, okay, ignore that, hit the internet, or what helps with brain injuries. And I came across the work of a doctor called Dr. Paul Harch, who is one of the world's leading experts in hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I read a book called The Oxygen Revolution that he'd written. And I'm just like, oh, whoa, this is amazing. And this is a chance. And this is something. And I asked my doctors here about it and knew nothing. Got poo-hooed, rubbish. It's quackery. It's rubbish, and I'm like, well, I don't think it is. And I've read the book, and this doctor has, and I saw the videos that he had, on his website of all the people that had recovered after, massive brain trauma. And so I'm like, I've got to get this. And so then I had to find a place to do it. And at the beginning, I actually approached a commercial dive company, and they let me use this as I got my mum eventually out of hospital. The first day I got her out, I didn't even take her home before I took her down to the factory to stick her in this big hyperbaric chamber, and which was not easy. We had to use a forklift to get her in, and it was real,
Oh,
it was
wow.
quite a rigmarole to get her in because she was, she couldn't move. She was in a barely sitting up in a wheelchair. And I did 33 treatments there, and then I lost access to that chamber because it had to go off on a contract. And but I could see that she was responding. She didn't just get up and walk or anything, but she was starting to use her hands, and she'd been paralyzed on the right side,
Mm.
and she was starting to try to form words, and there was just a flicker of intelligence behind her eyes, and I just knew that this was actually having an effect. But that was already 33 treatments in, and you only had the small effect. But I'm like, this is working. So then I went, searching the world and came across the guys that I just introduced you to, and bought a soft shell chamber, and installed it in a house, and then started to do one session after the other. And then I started studying everything else, including the DNA company and Dr. Mansoor's work. And then came, one step ahead of her in her rehabilitation process, developed my own systems, my own protocols every day. We worked with her around 8 hours a day, extensive work. And it took me 2.5 years to get her back to full health and full capacity, like full driver's license, going to the gym, walking 5Ks a day, doing all that. And that, the hyperbaric was a cornerstone of her rehabilitation, both for that, and then later for the concussions, and then later for the cancer as an adjunct therapy. Has been a very powerful part of that process. So now I have a clinic with a hard shell chamber, as well as the one that you see in the background there, and I'm a huge fan of it. It's just
So you have a
so
clinic in
amazing.
New Zealand where your clients come to
Yeah,
use it. Okay,
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'll send you some photos.
yeah, sure. Love to see. And you mentioned the dive shop. I guess traditionally you see these chambers for people that have like the bends that went scuba diving and
Exactly.
feel off, and it gets them back to normal.
Yep. And
And
so it's the opposite, because they've been down under the water and they've come up too fast. And so the nitrogen has basically, expanded in their blood vessels. And so they have to be brought back down and then brought up slowly. So
right,
but it's the opposite. We actually get put on an oxygen mask, and then we go to the equivalent, you're not actually underwater, but you're equivalent of being in most cases. So this one here is a 1.5 atmosphere. So that means you got 1.5 times the amount of atmospheric pressure on you that you do here at sea level where I am. And
yeah,
that allows you, and then some of the chambers go up to 2 and even up to 3 atmospheres and beyond, for the dive situations or in the hospital situations. with a soft shell chamber, you can only go to a maximum of 1.5. And
Mm,
1.5 is the perfect space for things like brain injuries and many other things. For things like diabetic wounds and even for cancer, it would be better if we could get up to 2. But when you go up to 2, it has to be it's a lot more difficult, put it that way, and there's a lot more regulation around it. And this the type of chamber that you have to get, the cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it just it's a step up in the
yeah.
difficulty sort of thing in providing it. But the 1.5 is really powerful,
Yeah,
good
we've seen,
therapy.
like, from biohackers to celebrities to, longevity gurus will typically have one of these at home,
Yeah, honestly, if you can possibly afford one, get one or get into a clinic. And you do need to do this in either a block of treatments, though. It's not a one and done. It's a bit like going to the gym. You do need a block of
Mhm,
treatments if you're depending on what you're dealing with. I mean, if you're going in for surgery and you just want to optimize your body before surgery and after surgery, then yeah, 2 or 3 before and 2 or 3 afterwards might be enough for that. But if you're dealing with something like stroke or cancer or concussions or things like that, you really need 30, 40 treatments in a relatively short period of time, ideally.
mm.
Alzheimer's, all of that type of thing, you need to have. In an ideal world, you'd have a block of treatments, say 30 or 40, and then you'd have that maybe once or twice a year, you know. And so for some people, having it at the clinic, that's doable. And some people, actually getting one and putting it in your house is a really good idea.
And I don't know if you know this, but how does it compare to the oxygen, that people get in their blood? Like, people get the IVs, and you'll go to a clinic, and I think they call it a 5 or a 10 pass. You go for 10 sessions.
Oh, that's ozone therapy. Yes,
Ozone
ozone
therapy,
therapy.
yeah.
So related, that's all part of the oxidative medicine family. So you've got ozone therapy, you've got UV light therapy, you've got hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and you've got intravenous vitamin C, and you've got red light therapy. And these are all part of the oxidative medicine family, meaning that they're
Mm,
working on the oxidative pathways, if you like, in the cell. And so they come at it from slightly different angles. But yes, ozone therapy is not something that I've been able to offer yet, but it is something that I'm very interested in getting the training for and doing at some point. I have a home ozone machine, so I use ozonated water. You can use it
mm.
rectally, so up your bum, so to speak. You have a little bag that you use with ozone, and that's really good for getting so O3. I don't want to butcher the science because I'll probably get it wrong, but it kills viruses, bacteria. Very, very good for things like that. Also it's used in so many different ways. And then you got the 5 and 10 pass types of ozones that you get in the doctor's offices, where some blood is taken out and it's put through a UV light sometimes, and then it's put through the ozone machine and then put back in. And yeah, they're all good, powerful therapies. My favorite of them, though, is hyperbaric, because yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but they all
Well,
work.
because of you, I'm gonna be getting one.
Yeah,
I've seen them everywhere, but I from you, it's the outcome. I've seen what it's done,
oh yeah.
right, for your mother, and
And
so I'm gonna be
my
working on
my aging rate, like that true diagnostic test, I do attribute half of that probably to hyperbaric. I
that.
mean, it's a
Mm.
bit hard to tell because I check everything and everything, but
Yeah. And how often do you use it?
oh, I use it at least 3, 4 times a week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and have done for 8 years. So I do think, because I'm 55 now, and I think like my okay, I can't run the stupid distances that I used to run because I'm not trained in that, but I feel
Yeah.
fitter, stronger, healthier, leaner, everything. Yeah, more
Yeah.
more than I used to be when I was 20 and when I was 30. And even when I was
That's awesome.
running like crazy distances, I was not healthy. And now, like I said, I don't have all the ailments that I used to have. And what is it?
Yeah.
Is it the supplements? Is it the diet? Is it the exercise? Is it the hyperbaric? I think it's a combination of all of those, but I do think it's a cornerstone. It's certainly something I'm never letting go. you know.
So if Red Bull came along tomorrow and said, "Lisa, we know you said you're retired. but there's one last race you need to do. It's 200 miles, whatever, something crazy, and there's some crazy amount of money that's gonna go to cancer research and all this stuff. Would you do it?
Probably not right now, unless it was really, really a lot of money. Because I can't leave mum now. She's my
Yeah,
priority. So my value system is that my family is first. So if
right.
it was going to benefit my family to do something more than it was going to cost them for me to be away, then yes, that would be my
Yeah,
criteria. Am I going to um, improve the lives of my family through doing something? Then I'll do it. If it's not, then I'm not.
yeah,
So
yeah,
everything goes through that lens. And mum needs me now. I mean, she's 82. She has got, obviously been through an awful lot, and she does need looking after now. So she is the lens of through which everything I do, and that limits me now. That limits me in my entrepreneurial endeavors. Sometimes I can't travel
yeah,
far. I can't get to conferences often. I can't, do speaking gigs all around the world. I've had to turn down because I can't travel. Can't do my racing, but that's okay. That's what you do, when you
yeah,
love somebody, and
yeah.
that has to be priority at this time.
And with longevity as a goal, there's this study from Harvard. It's this really famous study because it's the longest ongoing longevity study the world has seen.
Hmm.
It started in the 1930s and it's still going on.
Wow.
And what they're trying to figure out is what's that one thing that if you just do this one thing, it's the biggest impact on longevity. And they said it's maintaining high quality relationships.
Yep.
So like what you're doing, right? It's a lesser volume of high quality relationships.
Yep. Yep.
And that's the one thing that they found with if you look at the blue zones, you look at these people, it's a consistent trend,
Yep. It's
they're
connection,
so yeah,
love, feeling. I think one of the reasons why mum continues to fight on, despite all the horrors she's been through, and there've been some horrors and losing dad and, things like that, is that she feels loved, she feels wanted, she's needed for her grandchildren, for her children. So she has a purpose in this world, despite the fact that she's got a few disabilities now and, needs help with some things. She knows her value as a person
mm,
and as the head of this family still. And that means that she's going to fight to stay here. And
mm,
that's, I make sure she knows that I need her and that her grandchildren
yeah,
need her and, all the rest of it. Um, because if you take away a person's purpose, then they're gone. If they're no
yeah,
longer of use to society, then they often just give up because they don't feel, they've done tests in old people's home when they've just made them responsible for a pot plant, for goodness sake. And that alone, or an animal, then they'll be responsible and they'll stay around to look after that pot plant or that animal. It's that simple. Like we need each other. We're not made to be isolated and alone. And I fundamentally disagree with the thing. We'll make them comfortable and then stick them in
yeah,
a corner in front of the telly and just wait for them to die. That's just not okay in my world.
yeah.
I really think that
This
we,
is amazing. I mean, everything you've done, you've applied I mean, it helps that you're genetically wired to be a warrior,
yeah,
right? But what we learn from you is what's possible, and it is too bad that you're not globetrotting speaking anymore. You were inspiring so many people, but you're now technology allows you to do it another way. You have your podcast, there's online events and stuff. So we're still hearing from you, and of course, your books teach us a lot, and the videos. Everybody go to YouTube and look up. There's a documentary video. I think that was about the
yeah,
Himalayan
yeah,
trip,
yeah.
right?
I think I've got eight documentaries on there with different
Yeah.
races around
So
the world. Yep.
everybody should take a look at those and understand what is possible and time to put the excuses away, right? Let's make it happen. So, Lisa, I wanted to thank you. It was this phenomenal conversation as always. Whenever talking to you, I get inspired. I feel like I'm underperforming now, and I got to go do something.
Hell
So,
no. I look at what
so
you do, like, as all the work that you've done and what you're setting up now, and I'm just like, wow, wow, and I'm jealous. I'm like, oh gosh, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to go and do all these amazing things and to know all the people that you know, and you know, yeah, that's definitely not true, Kashif.
Well, this is what happens when you got dopamine deficiencies. Me and you are in the same bucket,
Exactly.
so it's what drives us. So so thank you again, Lisa. Thank you for sharing your personal stories, and inspiring everybody. And everyone can now understand that there's so much more that we're capable of that we think.
Yeah.
Let's start doing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Believe in yourself. Find people who tell you you can, not people who tell you you can't. Surround yourself with
Mm,
those types of people and then just go for it.
awesome. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Kashif.